So next up is GNIP.
Thanks. We know where the, oh, there it is.
By the way, while this set up, so the overall topic of this meetup is the data business, and there's a little more of a focus on the business side, the product side. At the same time, we have an audience that is half engineers, half business. So I'm trying to calibrate the speakers and the conversations to be of interest to both groups. I'm very interested in your feedback, through the meetup site or directly about how that works for you, or afterwards.
That was Matt's setup for I'm a boring business guy.
No, you're a great business guy.
So first of all, Splunk rocks. We love Splunk. We run a big part of our business off of it. I think Splunk loves GNIP.Maybe someday there will be little Splunk GNIP babies running around. All right, that was creepy. A couple of things. I'm going to talk about GNIP for a little bit. How many people know what GNIP is, roughly? Okay, a few of you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about GNIP just so you know where we're coming from, and then I'm going to talk more about some kind of things that are happening around businesses and some thought leadership around how businesses are starting to consume social data. So if you're going to think about GNIP, and this is almost where I start every discussion about GNIP, whether we're hiring new people or doing a presentation like this, is kind of what we believe. So we're a company that's really fueled by the idea that public social conversation has unlimited value, and there will be nearly limitless applications. Now, I think there's a lot of people that recognize that social data has value. If you think about the history of social data, on the application side, a lot of people went initially to the consumer side. Like, what can I build that's cool on top of this that consumers will love? We're a company, and we've been around for a while, that really is focused on what can businesses do with social data. And the second part is the kind of unlimited application. We've always felt like there's going to be amazing stuff built on top of social data for businesses. It's this entirely new lens that you can put into the world of business and fundamentally change almost any operation within your company, because you have this new, hey, what's the world thinking about this at this moment view that's never happened before. We decided not to focus on building the cool application. We decided to do something much less sexy, but just as important, which was we recognized that everybody that was doing that really cool stuff was going to need data, and that obtaining the data wouldn't be the easiest thing in the world, but it would be a very necessary thing. So what GNIP fundamentally does is we take data from lots of different social sources. I think there's something like over 100 feeds of different social sources. We bring that data in, we normalize it so that you consume it as if it were one stream, not 100 streams. We filter it so that you get exactly what you want, and we enrich it, which I won't really get into unless you want to make the data easier to consume, because we're talking about lots and lots of data. So this is the we're killing it slide. Basically, as I said, we've been around for a long time. I think people think social data, they think new startup, but we've been trying to solve this problem for a very long time. We've had a lot of success. We're now serving, social media monitoring was the first industry that really adopted this data for business purposes, and we're serving 8 of the 9 largest. One of the things I'm most excited about is just to see how fast the insights are spreading. So our customer base is now serving insights to over 90% of the Fortune 500. It's a lot of data. It's over 3 billion activities a day. I know we have some data scientists in the room, so to put that in perspective, it's more than 2 billion. And we provide access in that access piece. We also have access to data that you just can't get anywhere else, which I'll talk about in just a second. The data is everywhere. It's even in this building. If you messed around with the Bloomberg Professional Services terminals, can I say terminal?
Terminal, yes.
Okay. You'd see Twitter data flowing on there. This happens to be tweets from all the members of Congress. So we're fueling lots of different applications, including this one. The marketing guys had the title of this was Twitter in the House, and I told them nobody from Colorado should use the word "duh." So as I said, we get data from lots of different sources. Some of these sources we're using the public APIs, and some of them we have premium access. I think the key thing to know about who's using our data is that I describe them as they're oceanographers, not fly fishermen. They have these are businesses that are spending hundreds of thousands or oftentimes millions of dollars building business insights and analytics on top of this data. They need the data to be full coverage. They need it to be supported. They need it to be reliable. They need it to be redundant. Their needs are very different from the needs of a consumer who's pulling stuff off the spritzer, for example. The interesting story behind this is that the world kind of changed in terms of social data about a year and a half ago because Twitter recognized that there was this world of oceanographers that needed data access that was different than the consumer access needed for the public API. And they decided to actually launch commercial, I call it commercial grade products that had these attributes and make them available for business. Now, it's a side note in history that they chose GNIP to be the first partner to bring this stuff to market. Important side note for us. But it really changed everything forever because suddenly all these people that did want to invest and build on top of social data actually had access to the level of data that they needed and in a form that they needed. But the point tonight is that it's not just about Twitter. And sometimes when you think about social data and interesting things that are happening in social data, people go to Twitter. And I would argue it's because they've had, for a long time, the best access to data. There's also some nice things like it's super low latency and it's concise and things like that. But there are more sources out there. And Twitter is really good for certain business use cases. But it's less relevant for others, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about. So we're spending a lot of time trying to help our customers figure out what sources should be used for what business use cases and what problems. Now, this is an oversimplified version of the concept, but basically one dimension we're starting to look at is reaction time. So an event happens, how quickly does the social source react to that? And I think we had all recognized that Twitter has become kind of the quickest way to find out about breaking news outside of Bloomberg. But on the other end of the spectrum, something like intense debates, which represents blog comments, much slower, right? Blogs come after tweets, and naturally blog comments come after. So certain use cases demand sources that are super, again, low latency. You get quick reaction time to whatever's happening. Other events are not time sensitive at all. So we look at different sources in that dimension. We also look at it in terms of the depth of content. So Twitter actually happens to be very concise. Again, that's one of the positive things about it. But if you're looking for deep sentiment about what the world is thinking about a particular item, Twitter might not be the best source. There's some other interesting sources. So you put it all together, and we talk about it as a social cocktail. And again, this is an oversimplified graph of it, but here's really where the meat of it is, which is if you look at different business use cases, and social data is really penetrating the entire enterprise at this point. You have different business use cases, different social sources serve different business use cases. So, for example, on one extreme, you have PR crisis management. So this is, I want to know about something super fast before anybody else knows about it, and I want to respond to it. Well, something like Twitter is great for that, right? Because, again, it's super quick reaction time, and I don't need to know a lot of details. I just launched a new product. There's lots of tweets that are saying the battery caught on fire. I don't need a lot of more details other than, hey, there's a problem, and I need to address it. On the other end of the spectrum, we're seeing companies use social data for product development. So I already have this new gadget. I'm working on the next version. I want to understand over the history of time, what did people think deeply about my product? What did they love? What did they hate? What did they think the essence of the product is? Some of that data comes from things like blogs and blog comments. Reaction time has nothing to do with it. In fact, you might not be interested in real-time data at all. You might want historical data. So trying to get the right mix of data for different business use cases is a real challenge, and it's something that we're trying to help the world understand just a little bit. So let me show you just a little bit of an example of the science behind this. So this is back in Q4. Netflix announced after the closing that they announced their earnings, and they were horrible. And this graph represents the day after, the day when the market opened after they had announced horrible earnings. And so this darkest graph here represents blog comments, but let's actually first look at the lighter blue color here. This is Twitter's reaction to the news. So the interesting thing is the spike in Twitter data happened literally within seconds of the opening bell, and all the tweets said the same thing. Netflix opens down 40%. So not a lot of deep insights there, but very, very quick reaction time. Now if you look at the darker, that represents WordPress data actually. And there you see that the peak happened later, and I think Hillary made this point. If you look at kind of the half-life, there's a very long tail to the comments piece, and the half-life has actually happened after the closing bell. So, of course, it naturally takes people longer to write a thoughtful blog comment or blog post. And there, when we looked at the string, you got, why Netflix blew it, what went wrong, and people offered real opinions around their thoughts of what was happening. And then blog comments, which are the next piece, and in this case we were looking at WordPress and intense debate comments. You see that they peaked actually the next day, and if you went out the tail out, they lasted for a very long time. And there it's really interesting because comments represent the world's reaction to a point of view, so you get a very different sentiment around that data. The other interesting thing is looking at expected events versus unexpected events, even within the same category. So in this case, we're comparing natural disasters, a hurricane, which would be an expected event. If you get surprised by a hurricane, you get what's coming to you, and an earthquake, which is an unexpected event. So on the expected side, again, top left, hurricane, you get exactly the reaction that you kind of curve that you would expect, which is there's a buildup, there's a peak during the middle of the event, and then it trails off. Those spikes, by the way, are morning and night. And then on the other end of the spectrum is an earthquake. And the thing about this and why this is important is because these curves appear over and over again. Doesn't matter what the type of event is. We're seeing some general characteristics around expected versus unexpected. So as you're building out your, hey, we're going to use social data for X, you need to decide, are we trying to understand expected events? Like, hey, we're doing this launch and we want to see the world's reaction to it. Or is it an unexpected event, again, like the PR crisis management? And this is the last slide, thankfully for you guys, but it's basically just showing that there is a ton of stuff happening. When I say we serve 90% of the Fortune 500, I've gotten a few questions like, oh, really? Because there's some super boring companies in the Fortune 500. Like, are they really using social data? And the answer is they are, and they're doing it in incredible ways. So we're just starting to see, I think we're at the 1% usage, and it's going to really change all business operations. Again, started with social media monitoring, but it's going all the way down into things like supply chain management, where companies are looking to say, hey, we want to monitor social data to know if there's a strike happening in Argentina that's going to interrupt our rubber supply, or I'm a retailer and yes, I know what's out of stock, but I don't know what's out of stock that people are pissed off about. So looking at social conversation around a geofence around a retail store. So all these fascinating use cases. The point is, if there is a point, the point is that it's not just about Twitter data. A lot of different sources go into solving these use cases. And that's it.
Terrific. So just one quick question before we open up to everyone. So last time we had DataSift present here.
Never heard of them.
Are they direct competitors, friends, foes? I mean, without going into industry gossip, so how do you position vis-a-vis them?
So we get that question a lot because if you weren't, they were at the last session?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you weren't at the last session, DataSift is another company that has access to the Twitter Firehose. So we get that comparison a lot. I think that's kind of where the comparison stops. We're really focused, again, we've been around for a long time. We're really focused on the enterprise side of things. So companies that have the most demanding, largest data set needs, and we're focused on a lot of different data sources.
Okay, great. So a bunch of hands raising.
Hi.
Hi.
I think I kind of understand how we learn what people are thinking. How do we learn who is thinking it? So how do you segment the social media stream?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think, first of all, it's important to understand that there's a lot of use cases that you don't care who's saying it. And a lot of our customer use cases are not around who is saying it. People are trying to understand insights and sentiment around products and operational issues. So we don't focus very much on the who is saying it. Within the payload of a lot of the social sources, you're getting demographic information, so you can start to pull out, again, who the categories of people. But it's less about the Chris Moody said this, right? It's more about what did the world think, or what did a segment of the world think. You can also obviously understand by who somebody is by geography and things like that. Yeah.
You mentioned enterprises as the enterprise as your customer base. I'm curious how the government plays in to the services that you offer, and if you can talk about that.
Yeah.
Is it something that you're seeing more of, or is it something that you're not?
Yeah, absolutely. The government is a huge consumer of social data, and there's some ways that you. The U.S. government is a huge consumer of social data, and some use cases that your head probably would immediately go to are around intelligence and so forth. Some of the ones that I think are most fascinating that we're helping to fuel are some of the emergency response use cases. Again, I mentioned earthquakes and understanding evacuation planning. If there's a hurricane happening, right? Again, it's an expected event. You have all this planning and software, GIS tools that allow you to decide how are people going to get out of the city if there is a hurricane. But once the hurricane is full on, a lot of those tools kind of break down. Well, that's where you add this social layer, and you can see, well, people are tweeting bridge out, right? We need to understand how to, and they take pictures. People are actually now turning to Twitter and Facebook before they turn to 911 in some cases to talk about their situation. So it's giving, again, the emergency responders again a whole new lens. But it's really, I think, every branch of the government almost is looking. The Department of Energy is very interested in social data, for example.
So I have a question about analyzing content. Sentiment analysis is pretty easy, but beyond sentiment analysis, suppose I'm BP, and I want to know if people in general agree that BP is doing a good effort in cleaning up the Gulf Coast, right? Yeah. And I want to know how much agreement and how much disagreement there is, just beyond sentiment analysis, because there are ways of expressing agreement and disagreement that don't show any sort of sentiment markers. Do you do that kind of analysis?
It's a great question. So we do not do that, and that's kind of to my earliest point. We recognize that there were going to be hundreds of companies that were trying to solve that, and they would take radically different approaches. The commonality is they'd all need the data to work on. So we don't do any kind of analytics or insights. That's what our customers do.
One more?
So what kind of applications?
Yeah, what are people designing so that they can do analytics, so that they can then sell to? I should ask you. I'm sorry. Are you providing that capability to outside partners?
Yep.
To get access to your hoses so that they can build an application and then sell it to an enterprise?
That's exactly right. So we typically, and there are some exceptions, but we typically don't serve the brands directly. Our data is a little raw for them. So we're typically partnering with somebody who is doing the sentiment analysis or predictive analysis or brand monitoring. They're building these applications for the enterprise. of which social may be the entire piece of the data set. It might be a piece. The entire, there's a $40 billion business intelligence industry that is built around these traditional data warehouses and data marts that are driving a lot of the businesses within large companies. Clearly, social is going to be entering into that. So in that example, we would be providing social data to the BI platforms, the Oracles, the IBMs, those types of people. Yeah, exactly.
Great. So if there's no more question, I think we should, last one.
How many employees do you have?
We have, it's changing very quickly. I think we have 36 employees.
So engineering-wise, why Boulder? How many of those 36 are engineers?
Mm-hmm.
Any plans to grow?
Yeah, the first question is, have you been to Boulder? It's pretty awesome. The short answer is about half our company is engineers. For the longest time, we were all engineers. Boulder is an amazing place. They're actually per capita have more PhDs than any other city in the United States. It's a scientist town. There's lots of government agencies that are actually set up there, like NIST, for example, a government agency in Boulder. There's a University of Colorado. So it's a great town for talent, and it's a lifestyle choice. So you have a lot of amazing engineers that want to just have a different lifestyle. They want to be able to bike to work or hike at lunchtime. And so it's worked in our favor, which allowed us to bring in talent and recruit accordingly. Would that answer your question?
And we are hiring.
And we are hiring, and in fact, you're getting a business card.
You characterize yourselves as the Grand Central Station, right? As like long term of the.
It sings. I think we're going to start using that.
I saw the Wikipedia.
Yeah. Okay.
It's quite some years ago. So in Boulder, you're using these New York isms.
We love New York.
Great. On that note, thank you very much.
Thank you.